if you jointly own property with someone, like in tenancy in common, and they get into trouble, financial trouble, liens get put on the property, it will affect you and affect the property as a whole. One of the most important decisions you're gonna make when you purchase property, really anywhere, but especially in Hawaii, is how you take title or how you hold tenancy. And I'm going to give you a disclaimer first to start off all of this, is that I am not an attorney, and if you need to seek legal advice before making a decision on how you hold tenancy or how you take title, please do that. The purpose of this video is purely just to let you know what the options are, so you can have an understanding and know what questions to ask and what to consider when making this decision. So there are 4 ways in Hawaii that you can hold title or take tenancy, and they're very, very important because it affects the way you can sell the property in the future and who has to agree to be part of that sale. And maybe most importantly, it affects what happens to the property when you die and who it passes on to and who the ownership transfers to. And you really want to consider what your intentions are, especially if you are going to jointly own property with other people when this happens. And so I'm going to cover what the 4 types of tenancy are in Hawaii, so you have an idea and a summary as to how they work, and then you can make a decision when the time comes on what works best for you and what your intentions are. So the first one is tenancy in severalty. This is pretty straightforward and the simplest one. If you're a single person, if you're going to hold title by yourself and own property by yourself, you would do tenants in severalty. Very straightforward. Part of your estate, it's going to go to your heirs and whoever you determine. Pretty straightforward. You're the only ones that has to sign to sell it, and so no complications there. The second, and probably second most straightforward way to hold title, is tenancy by the entirety. And this is where married couples, legal married couples, hold title, and it basically passes to the other person upon their death. So very straightforward, very easy, and then the other person's estate is now responsible for the property. So that's reserved for married couples, and so you would take title in tenancy by the entirety if you are a married couple.
If you're looking to relocate here on the Big Island, I want to share with you a resource that we put together. Over 80 agents from my team, expert agents here on the Big Island, put together a relocation guide that will help you evaluate all of the important factors that you want to take into account before you move here to the Big Island. School districts, healthcare, employment, all of the things that you got to think about, we put into one home buyer's guide that will help you figure out what is best when you start this relocation process here to the Big Island. So if you want this guide, just click on the link below, fill out the form. We will send you the guide for free. And if you want to take the next steps and have a conversation with us, we'd be happy to help.
The next 2 are the 2 that get complicated and sometimes get mixed up, and it's important to know the difference and understand how they work. So the first one is tenancy in common. So tenancy in common is when 2 or more people own the property in equal or specified amounts. So if myself and my partner own a property 25/75, we can decide to do that via the deed and that agreement on the title of that property. And in this case, with tenancy in common, it's going to pass on to their heirs. So if I own 25% of a property, that 25% stake will go to my heirs, or who I determine to take over my estate when I pass. It doesn't go to the other person, and I can mortgage the interest in my property. It's good. The property is going to be subject to my creditors. If I have creditors, they can put liens on the property. Tenancy in common is where multiple people own a property in an equal or specified amount, and then it passes on to their heirs. The other way you can own property with other people, if you're unmarried, is joint tenancy. So joint tenancy is when you own property with other people, but each joint tenant holds an equal undivided interest in the property. So you cannot specify 25/75 or 10%/90. It's if there's 3 people, everybody owns 33.3%. If there's 4 people, everybody owns 25%. It's an equal undivided interest in the property. And what happens with joint tenancy is it passes to the other owners upon death. So if we have 4 joint tenants, the 25% that the one person owns when they die will be divided up 3 ways to the other 3 living joint tenants, and they will all own 33.3% of the property upon passing. And so corporations, partnerships, and other businesses cannot own title this way. This is mainly for individuals, and this makes a lot of sense for families. I can tell you, I currently own a piece of property with my brother and my mother, and so we are joint tenants. We all own 33.3%. If anything happens to any of us, it would pass to the other family members in that case. If I wanted to change that and have my share in the property pass to my children or my wife, we would have to change the title and be tenancy in common in order to do that. So very important to understand the differences here. And again, if you have any questions about this, you really do want to consult with an attorney and make sure paperwork is drawn up, there's clear expectations and written contracts with whoever you are owning property with, because it can get very messy. And if you jointly own property with someone like in tenancy in common and they get into trouble, financial trouble, liens get put on the property, it will affect you and affect the property as a whole. And again, anytime you jointly own property, everyone has to sell the property together. Everyone has to agree to sell the property together, so that can restrict what you do with the property in the future. So those are the 4 ways to own property in Hawaii. Do your research, make sure you know what questions to ask before you do it, and avoid a uncomfortable or painful situation in the future by not choosing the right type of ownership. Hopefully you can avoid that. But if you have any questions about this, and again, not legal advice, you can always reach out, Dylan@buybigIsland.com, or in the comments below. We'll have a link to my calendar. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Every week we'll send out more information about buying property in Hawaii and all of the things that you need to know. Always appreciate you guys watching. Have an awesome day. See you guys next week. Aloha.